Welcome to the Indiewood Podcast, a podcast about independent film and the many hats filmmakers have to wear in order to get those films made. With me this week, I have a very talented actor, a very dedicated producer, and a very green yet eloquent and has good ideas, whatever that word is, writer, Sarah Randall Hunt.
He's also my husband. So.
Yeah, we're also married.
Yeah. So no.
I asked Sarah to come on the pod to talk about a lot of really cool things because she's a really cool multi-hyphenate, and you are on this wonderful show now called 1923, and I wanted to really kind of dig into not only how you got to that point, right, like being on a big show and working on a big show, but how all the different things you've done, producing, writing, acting, and not only in film and television, but in theater, musical theater. Did you ever do an opera?
I mean, I did operetta performances.
Because you studied opera.
But I've never been in an opera, no.
For a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think as we talked about your career in the first episode, this being episode 2, there was a lot of talk about partnerships and support and like finding your collaborators and finding your community, and something I've struggled with. But I think what is unique about us is we aren't only married, we are the creative partners.
Yeah.
And we made a web series together. We're currently producing another short and another feature. And I think people look at that and they're like, wow, that's really cool. And like, I want to do that. But I don't know if people really understand how difficult it is. Not only because like it's a challenge to really let go of ego, mm-hmm. and when things are difficult, you really have to kind of not take offense or even like react, because sometimes that can be taken as offense. So we've worked really hard to be communicative and supportive of each other and our endeavors. And then we made a web series that nearly broke us. But not like in a fun way. I think it was a really cool learning experience.
Yes.
But I wanted to get your side of the story. Or I mean, I know your side of the story. We live together.
But to
tell people, because I think it's a really cool thing that we love sharing is this partnership that we have. Yeah.
First of all, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Grateful to be here, and I think you're swell.
What do they say? Long time, first time?
First time, long time?
Yeah, first time caller, long time listener.
Yeah, that's it. First time caller, long time listener. That's me. Okay, so early on in our relationship, I joked that like if we could survive an IKEA trip, mm-hmm. we could survive anything.
Yeah, and we did. IKEA was nothing.
And then the next level is if you can survive making a film together, you can really get through anything. COVID, wildfires, all sorts of other things have happened since we've
made Stupid
Cupid. And I actually think that, we're gonna try not to talk about our marriage the entire time we're talking about partnership, because this has got to be a practical application for people who are trying to have good partnerships in filmmaking.
But I do want to add to that.
Yeah.
I think that's also important for people who aren't creative themselves, but have a partner that's creative.
Yeah.
A partner that's in film. How do you support them?
Well, that's a good point.
How do you treat your significant other who's trying to make it?
Yeah.
How do you, because I know that there are some couples, maybe not, in our circles, but then the stories that I've heard, in the filmmaking world was like, oh, my partner was like, yeah, you can go do that thing.
What a cute little hobby.
Yeah. Or that, or be like, but like, when are you going to get a real job?
When's that thing gonna pay off?
When, how are we going to those, I get those fears of like, okay, you need to pay rent, you need to be supportive, you need to think about long-term growth and retirement and kids and blah, 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 blah. But that feels counterproductive because you're not really giving them the opportunity to shine. Mm-hmm. And they're always going to be in the back of their mind like, oh, I'm bad. This isn't a real thing. I'm like, there's guilt, there's shame, like all those powerful emotions. And I think that's important to talk about. So, talking about partnership.
Yeah, I think, okay, so a little bit more about my life outside of filmmaking that I think runs parallel to it is I am actually a soon-to-be certified project manager, which is basically...
so corporate.
I know, right? Which is just basically a term that means like producing for business people.
Yeah.
And it's a very similar skill set. It's very funny. But I've learned a lot about a lot of it I think is very intuitive, but it kind of boils it down to some high level things about communication. And communication is as much on the sender as it is on the receiver to confirm understanding and shared partnership. So if I say words and then you're like, oh yeah, I totally understood what you said, it's this, and that's not what I intended, that is not your fault for not understanding my words. It's both of our faults for not hearing right and not using the right words, right? So, and in a partnership, I'm going to reference this book again because I just read it and it was amazing. So if you listen to episode 1, I referenced this once before. I'm going to do it again. It's called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. Audiobook, stellar. In it, he also talks about how in conflict or in conversation, mostly in conflict, like both parties have to show up 100% responsible. So often when we're talking about collaboration, we're thinking of things as a 50-50 shot if you have 2 people in a scenario. But if you look at it that you are 100% responsible for both you communicating something to someone, but also 100% responsible for them understanding what you are trying to say to them, and also 100% on the reverse side is you confirming understanding with another person. So that's just like basics communication. You wouldn't expect that to be so necessary to like take some time to discuss, but especially when you're on a film set, you're moving super fast. You got to catch that thing right before the light goes, and it's a really busy time, or you don't have a permit, you're trying to do this thing, and people.
What's a permit?
Yeah, but basically, I think it really comes down to: are you being clear? Are you all on the same page about what the end goal is? And that is also like a top-down thing from a producing standpoint or a director's standpoint to make sure the vision is super clear. And then with regards to like, I think we can get into the micro of that, but I think it has to start there.
No, I think you're entirely correct, because I think this happens in our personal life as well. Like sometimes we communicate and like I say something and you're like, I don't like that. And I'm like, okay, I need you to tell me what you heard.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, I heard that you like to kick dogs. And I was like, what? No, I want to pet dog.
Rumor starting here, folks. Here,
go stop. Get out of here. And so that also I think is crucial for partners working together on a project, whether or not you're married. It's all about your intention and how you're communicating that, and also goes both ways. It's you're 100% responsible for both things, communication and intention, and having the person understand you. But then they're also responsible 100% for hearing you, for listening, and for double checking with you that is what they meant.
I think one of the most powerful things I've learned is confirming understanding is the key, I think, for excellent communication on both sides. Whether you're a producer who's trying to communicate something to somebody, making sure that person, like having them like, what did you hear me say? Because I was like, really, I haven't slept. I have no idea if I was even speaking English when I said this. Could you just mirror back what you think you heard me say? And then also, if you're receiving something, if you're a PA or something, and you're, it's also Fast and Furious time. You can be like, just double checking you meant 2 of those, right? And then moving on. I think that helps you save time in the long run, and it's also really respectful.
And speaking of respect, a lot of this communication also goes hand in hand with ego. I think when you're talking about creative things and you're in different positions, you're a producer, you're a director, you're an actor, you're a grip, you're a DP, you're a PA, right? There are instances where maybe someone else has an ego, and that's bad. I mean, there's not going to be a perfect world where that doesn't exist, But I think if everyone goes into a scenario where they're collaborating and they are focusing on communication, but they leave ego at the door.
Yeah.
Like I forget who. Oh my God, she was the host of the Great British Bake Off for a while.
With the short hair.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
She has a Danish name, or like a Swedish or Scandinavian name. And so
names are not our strong suit.
She was on a show and she was like, "Oh, I've been married for 25 years or more." And the guy goes, "How do you do it?" She goes, "Well, every obstacle we come to, my goal is always to think of the other person, and my partner does the same thing. So you come into a situation and it's not about you anymore. It's about the other person. But that only works if they give that back to you."
Yeah, that's totally true. And I think when you're in scenario, and you don't always have control of the situation you're walking into, especially as an actor. You're there for a day, you're there for 2 days, you're there for 3, you're there for a week.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm sorry to interrupt because I want to talk to you about the couple things you shot. There were some big things and some little things, still really cool and prestigious things. And then I want to kind of connect that to how we work together. And so you recently shot an episode of Chicago Fire.
Wait, could I go back for a second?
Yeah, I would.
Well, you were talking about ego. I don't want to lose it.
Okay, yeah. Tell me about ego. And then we'll circle back to
Okay, so you brought up ego.
Okay.
And as an actor, you're walking into a scenario, and sometimes if you're just gigging on a thing or whatever, you're walking into a scenario, or if it's a super short project like short, you don't always know what you're walking into. And so you kind of got to roll with the punches at whatever's coming at you, energy-wise or ego-wise, if that's the case. And I think the thing that you have to remember is like, this person is behaving this way because there's something that they need to feel that they don't right now. You can, if it's really bad, you can be like, picture them as a little child. And what does this person need? And then see if you can just like not take it personally. Yeah. And because most of the time it's not personal.
True.
It's really not, but it's hard not to.
Yeah. I do agree with you on that. Like that's a good way of dealing with people that are having a bad day or might be too demanding. But what does come to mind is like one person can only do that so much.
Oh, 100%. Like so if you're in a long-term project.
Yeah. And someone's doing that every day.
No. I mean, then that's conflict resolution skills, and then maybe not dealing with that anymore. Because no is a complete sentence.
No is a complete sentence.
No is a complete sentence.
And so this is why I want to talk about Chicago Fire, because you came in there for a day. You came into a project that people...
Which everyone was lovely, by the way.
Yes.
There were no egos on that set.
This is why I want to bring it up, because these are people that have been working together for years, right? And then you come in for a day. My question for that was, like, how do you integrate yourself and communicate clearly in that where you're only there for a day? These people have a shared language.
Yeah.
How do you, as an actor, or how can other people arrive at, a project for a day? How can they better communicate with the people that have been there for years?
This is where I think being an independent filmmaker or as an actor, just like doing a couple shifts as a PA and understanding what a set life is like is hugely helpful in you playing better in the sandbox with other people. I still screw up. I'm like, wait, what is the first day do and all that stuff? Like, I still do. But I think it's really important for you to know when is a good time to be a human being with another person, and when is a good time to be quiet and turn into wallpaper. You know what I mean? Like, you kind of need to understand your place on the set and the working order of things in order to kind of make everybody's job easy, so you're not trying to talk to a star while they're like simultaneously trying to get audio on them or something like that too. So I think in situations like where you're a day player or you're a co-star or you have a short period of time on set, I think knowledge is power when it comes to you understanding the vibe of what's going on. Also, we're all made of water, like you can feel when something is tense when you walk into a room, and you need to walk in and not be like, let me fix it. Well, like maybe energetically you can try and help positively contribute to the energy of the room, but there's something going on and you need to be respectful of what that energy is. And it might not be a bad thing, but you don't want to, you have to kind of, you got to go with the flow.
Bringing it back to communication.
Yeah.
it's also about listening. And so you're not also just listening to the person that's talking, you're listening to like the vibe, to put it in Gen Z terms.
And a lot of times too, that's not about you.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've heard actors take it personally that there were like 20 takes of this one thing or whatever. And especially in a scenario where there's a lot of crap going on and there's something highly technical or something that's not going well with the environment that you're in.
Yeah.
We're not always going to be, as filmmakers, focused on making sure the actor knows that it's not their fault. I think in the best case scenario, people are like, oh, this isn't you. This is just this is for sound. This is for lighting. This is whatever. But and if you're curious, you can say, any feedback? Anything you need me to do differently? And if the answer is no, just keep doing your shit.
Yeah.
Keep doing your takes.
And that's what, because I think, that's why I think Chicago Fire is a really cool example, because they had like a really big special effect. It was out on location.
And a dog.
Yeah, and an
animal. The cold. There were a lot of elements that they were wrestling with, and that team, they are such pros.
Yeah.
Every day
we're doing that.
Oh my gosh. And it's like a new thing every week, I mean, and they've been working together for a really long time. 13 years?
Yeah.
Long time.
Well, this is also kind of a cool segue to Unfinished Business, because that was a pickup.
Yep.
And so that film was wrapped and they needed a scene, and so they brought you in. And I think I want to talk a little bit about preparation.
Yeah.
And how, partnerships can help preparation. Because in that film, they were like, we need you to play this secretary who's German, and so you were like prepping an accent. You were like, and did you learn your lines on the day? Because they had new lines.
Well, there were new pages the morning of, and I was improvising in a German accent. Oof. It was fun, but it was also scary, and that's the truth of. And I think the lesson is here not just for actors, but for filmmakers in general, that you gotta have your stuff buttoned up, because you don't know what's coming.
Yeah,
you don't know what's coming down the pipeline, and even though you think you have every plan for what you want to do when you get on set, you're gonna get there and be like, this is not the magical kitchen that I envisioned in my brain.
No.
And then it's going to be something completely different. The aesthetics might be different.
Dark basement.
So
it's damp.
Yeah, you kind of have to, in your preparation, you can have your own daydream or fantasy what that would be. But I think also just like planning for contingencies or getting thrown off center is a great thing to experiment with.
And that's, what I wanted to kind of mention is for partnerships, especially for creative ones, coming in prepared. I think that's also really important. But here's my question for you as an actor. How much is too much preparation? Like, when do you over prepare? And it's kind of then, what's that word I'm looking for? Diminishing results?
Diminishing returns. Yeah. I mean, I think anytime, every actor's different, but I love preparation because I feel more free the more confident I feel. And I feel more willing to experiment when I know the words within an inch of their lives. So when do you get stiff or rigid? Or I think that also applies to other filmmaking roles. I think it's not just actors. It's like, where do you start to feel creative and play? And even like watching some of these roundtable discussions with the Oscar nominees this year, it's like two fantastic actors were talking about their preparation, and they were disagreeing about how much prep they wanted. And
everybody has a different capacity and a gauge.
Yeah.
And different pockets.
And some people love the feeling of chaos of like riffing. And as a collaborator, you and your partner might have different styles of preparation. And how do you deal with that?
Yeah. How do you yes and?
How do you yes and each other?
Speaking of yes and, I do want to talk about partnerships for creatives that are working together, but also living together. Specifically talking about us, and I think this is going to help for other people. We've both had parts of our points in our career where we maybe faltered a bit, where we were like, oh, I'm not going to take that risk because I have to think about job, family, whatever. And I think it's important for your partner to not only be supportive in that, but allow and kind of maybe push your partner to take risks, right? Because I think Stupid Cupid in itself was a risk.
Totally.
Right? When we were...
Every project is a risk.
Well, I mean, it is, yes, but I think the way we did it was bigger than you intended. Because initially you were like, oh, I'm going to do one episode. I was like, let's do 7.
Yeah.
You know, and you're like, I don't know where the money's going to be. I'm like, we'll figure it out. And then you get a
This
grant.
guy is the ultimate manifester, though. And I don't, if you can explain to the people how you do that, I would love to, if that's a vitamin, I would buy it and I would take it. So like, you heard it here first, folks.
But like,
vitamins.
you know, I was trying to support you because you had this vision for Stupid Cupid, which I think was magical, and I was trying to be supportive in that area. But I think it goes both ways because for me, you know, you are incredibly supportive in, you know, pushing me to do things with my scripts, with my directing, with my features, with my shorts, you know, and because we're creative collaborators, you're producing my work and I'm directing and writing, and you know, you want to star in them and you have starred in them. I think it's a synergistic collaboration. So like, oh, I pushed you to make a web series, but I directed it, you know, so like you had this opportunity to shine, but I also benefited from it. And I think that's what it is. It's synergy, you know, in a creative partnership. What do you think?
Yeah, I concur.
Yes.
Synergy. Yes. I don't know. I mean, I think like...
Because in the last year, we've both been like pushing each other creatively.
Yeah.
And I pushed you into a lot of uncomfortable things creatively that then, you know, you're writing a feature now. And I was like, you should write more. And you're like, I'm never a writer.
And you're also doing the right artist's way.
Yeah, which I've talked about before,
Yes,
which has been fun. It took me a while to get there.
Hey.
But like, I think that's such a crucial thing to do for your partners, to push them into creative unknowns that they could thrive in.
And so for people who maybe aren't creatives, who have a partner who's creative, or if you have a best friend who you make stuff with, I think it's definitely a cool thing to just like celebrate each other's W's and L's, and also, you know, gently offer peaceful nudges of like, I just believe in you so much. I think you can. What if you could have the fantasy version of this, what would it be? Yeah. And you know, sometimes when you're talking project collaborators, there's limitations in time or money. But I think a lot of times the limitations are what are the creative problem solving processes.
Because I mean, speaking of the work that we've done, there have been projects where we've had multiple limitations. Like, we can't shoot there. We got to shoot for less. We got to do more in less time. And then every single obstacle becomes an exercise in creativity.
Well, they're not all wins. They're not all fabulous.
We've done stuff that's never going to see the light of day.
And I mean, look, like, there's always cracks in the monster. And you being the person who's like creating the thing will be the one that sees all of them. And maybe other people will notice a crack or two, but it's never as much as the original creators. But that's the whole process. That's the evolution. Is like, okay, this is my favorite part about filmmaking too. Is like, oh God, this thing happened. Now what are we going to do? And that's when the fun stuff happens. Yeah.
Bringing it back to the thing you said about being a partner to someone who isn't creative, and kind of nudging them in the right direction. I think there's also the opposite end of that. You know, if you have a creative partner and you think what they're doing isn't real, and I'm using air quotes, that's a problem. Like, that's going to be not only detrimental to your relationship, but to like their career path, you know, and you're going to wound them as an artist, and that's really tough. And so I think being supportive is crucial. And if you're not, if you think that you can't, that's a conversation you should have. Because I feel like there's some folks that I know where that's the case, where they're like, oh, I want to try this thing, and their partner's like, get a job. And I'm like, that is a job. Like, people get paid to do this. It's hard to like really kind of make a consistent thing out of it. But like, you know, and as we've talked about on this podcast before, nothing you do is a waste of time.
Yeah. Well, I think you're magical because you also come from artists. Your entire family, like the people who made you are artists, and not everybody has that experience. So I guess, you know, me being naive and, you know, being kind of birthed in this fairy forest of artists. No, but you're
like,
right.
You know, and this could be not only for partners, but also for family members, like, you know, and maybe even for artists that need to hear this, you know, who've had family that maybe didn't treat their art well or support it. Because I've had that too, you know, coming from a family of artists. There were moments where my art wasn't supported for a myriad of reasons, right? And that was painful. But I think if you are one of those people who has a family member or a partner, maybe a family member, I think that's more realistic, who's like, I don't get it. Just
could be any of the above.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go shake their hand, look them in the eye and say, I want a job. You know, I think it's okay to feel hurt, but it's also, I think, important to realize that that's not true.
And I also think
not true being like your art isn't fake. What you're doing is real. It's a real job.
Well, it's real to you.
Yeah.
And that's all that really matters, honestly.
That's true.
I mean, I think we're only, as a society, and with scientific and sociological and psychological research, coming around to the fact that slapping yourself or like punishing someone for doing a bad job is so counterproductive. It is the worst thing you can do for creativity, for collaboration, for the long-term big picture success of a project, right?
Not even just a project, a company.
A company is that, like, look, you have to be able to give and receive feedback. That is super important, but that's about mutual respect. And that is also about, but like, so the slap of the wrist doesn't work. What does is gentle nudging. And I'm so grateful to know Alan Blumenfeld and Catherine James, who just by watching their example of like loving, creative, expensive, yes, and then what? And like watching the two of them as collaborators and also business people, actors, filmmakers, like they're multi-hyphenate artists that live here in Los Angeles, that they have this joyful sort of like positivity about them that I really admire and aspire to cultivate. But I truly think the only thing you're doing when you're slapping somebody's wrist or when you're, it's disruptive.
Yeah.
You will run into conflict on set. You will run into conflict in a relationship, and whether that be a business one or a romantic one or a friendship one or a family one. But it's the how you handle the next bit. And some of the most amazing creatives I've ever seen, cool as a cucumber the entire time, you know? So, and I used to wait tables in New York, and Danny Meyer would talk about like, he wanted his service to look like swans on the top, and they're very elegant on top, but then they're pedaling like crazy underneath, just trying to keep it moving. So be the swan.
Be the swan. I feel like we went from like how to be a good partner, how to be like a good creative collaborator to like, let's fix society.
I'm ADHD. Come with us.
I mean, it all kind of flows into itself, you know?
Yeah.
Like what we talked about in regards to, you know, partnerships and creative partnerships and like relationships all flow into like, how do you raise your kids? Like, you know, all this stuff that we were doing, you know, 30 years ago, like, yeah, this is how you like, you know, knock some sense into them is like now traumatic.
Yeah. Well, and on the other end, be willing to be so wrong.
Yeah.
I think that's a great thing to cultivate if you're trying to be a good collaborator. Accept that you might not be right.
Yeah.
Accept that, okay, well, what if this person is coming to me with this idea? Let's explore that. If you have the time, great. If you don't, sometimes you got to be the guy that's like, all right, thank you so much for your beautiful idea. And on the next feature, we'll have time to do it.
Yeah.
But, you know, be willing to be wrong.
I like that. I think we'll end on that.
Yeah.
And on be a swan.
Be a wrong swan.
Be the wrong swan. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We hope you enjoyed that ramble about collaboration and partnership and existentialism, the human experience. Be a swan, be wrong, have fun, play, listen, and be open to opportunity and possibility. Yeah.
Preach.
See you next week. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Anywood Podcast. You can find the podcast anywhere you find your podcasts or on the CFA YouTube channel.
From the CFA Network, Cinematography for Actors is bridging the gap through education and community building. Find out about us and listen to our other podcast at cinematographyforactors.com.
Cinematography for Actors Institute is a 501c3 nonprofit. For more information on fiscal sponsorship, donations, because we're tax exempt now, so it's a tax write-off, and upcoming education, you can email us at contact@cinematographyforactors.com. Thanks.